Hi everybody, Gisele Grenier here from artplace.ca. Well, it's another hot one outside, so I'm indoors and I've got the air conditioner going and it's nice and quiet. So I thought what I would do is create a video specifically on making an art journal. Not the painting steps or anything, that's for other tutorials, but just on making an art journal and the different types. So what I wanted to do is explain I've got about 40 art journals, actually 46 art journals now, some of them complete, some of them not complete, and I'm going to explain to you why I prefer doing a lot of preliminary work and a lot of my creative stuff on what I call Funky Fridays, which is what today is, why I prefer doing that in an art journal. First of all, when I first started with working in an art journal, it was specifically because of a space issue. With saving space. So just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, so I've got this art journal here. This is one that I just started to prep for some upcoming videos. Okay, so this has already been painted. I'm going to explain this to you later. So it's all, it's watercolor paper, one single sheet. Okay, what I have here, you see how thin it is? Okay, this will give me 12 painting or art surfaces to work from. That's approximately 10 by 11. Okay, it's a good size for doing studies, color mixing, just experimenting and all that stuff. And I do an awful lot of experimenting in a variety of the other journals. But for the space saving, okay, so that gives me 12 surfaces on 140-pound watercolor paper. So it's not chintzy paper, this is actual art paper that is used to create formal art. And I also have some art journals where I use 140-pound mixed media paper, which is a different texture. Okay, so this is 12 surfaces. Just to show you the space difference, this is 12 pieces of the thinnest masonite that I have. What a difference. So you can see how much space working in an art journal, artist journal, saves over working with masonite. What I do is a lot of my preliminary work when I'm working on fine art pieces like a pet portrait or a wildlife portrait is in here, and then I make notes and stuff like that. Then I take everything I've done with that and then work to an actual, on a canvas or something. There's a lot of my prep work is done here, and I make the notes and whatever. So I love working in this. And then sometimes I will actually create a piece of art in the art journal that is so good that I want to frame it. Just cut the page out. All I do is just cut the page out and ready to go. Okay, but I like this as it's an actual history of art that I've done, because I don't like to throw any of my art out. That's especially when I started to learning how to do stuff. I've tried all these different mediums, but it got to a point where I have all my art stored, especially the experimental pieces and the study pieces. It was getting to a point where it was getting really uncomfortable on space. So I'm doing everything in here now. So just on the saving of the space, that's a no-brainer. Okay? Now, in the style, there are a couple of different styles of journal. The one that I'm actually going to show you today is this style. Okay, because it's the easiest, it's the fastest, and it's the most economical. You can make an art journal like this, 12 surfaces, okay, with just a watercolor paper for probably, on the high end, $5. That's on the high end. This one here, if I just work on the actual cost of the paper, $2.95. That's the cost of this paper. Mind you, I got it on sale, but still. Okay, $2.95. Then there's the cost of the thread, the needle, the awl and bone folder and X-Acto knife, but I'll talk to you about that later, because you can use regular household items. So there's different types of journals. So you've got ones that are multiple signatures. Now a folio is a single folded sheet of paper. You take those folios, you stack them together, that becomes a signature. So this book here has multiple signatures in it. Okay? Multiple signatures. And this one here was for an art challenge I was doing on Terraskin. Okay, and I did on this a Coptic stitch where the stitch is shown on the outside, and I just bound it with duct tape, drywall tape. This was experimenting. Then you've got where, similar to the one I'm going to be showing you, where you can actually have flaps. You could actually have flaps in your book. And then you've got another one which is a Coptic stitch with covers. Okay, and this is also with watercolor paper. Now, the reason why I'm showing you this is we're going to be creating more of this style, okay? We're going to create it without the flaps, but if you want to make flaps, you simply just fold the pieces over, okay? The reason why I want to talk to you about this part here before we even get started is you have the option of painting your pages ahead of time, then cutting and binding to make your book, or you can paint them as you go. One of the differences is that this one here, I actually painted these after they were bound, where you can create individual looks. Now this is a journal that I've just started, but you can create the individual pages, okay, different looks, although it's all the same monochromatic look. They're independent on the actual look, okay? And the purpose of base painting your pages is that so you don't look at white pages. This one here, this was from single sheets of watercolor paper where I painted the entire sheet first and then cut them and then bound them. And what this gives you is that every spread, okay, spread is what's open to you, every spread is different. Okay, and this is just, again, so you don't have to look at a white page. Okay, so everything is different. So this is where it's been painted ahead of time, so you get random looks on your pages. This is upside down. Random looks on your pages versus painting everything after it's been bound. Okay, so there's a difference. Now you can also take your pages and paint them. I guess to say you're making this book out of, let's say, 5 sheets of watercolor paper. You can paint them, prepare them all the same style. Okay? So if you want to paint your pages ahead of time to give your book a different look, you can do that. But for the purpose of this video, because we're making such a small book, it doesn't really matter. Okay? But just to basically give you an idea, you can take the pages, paint the whole sheet at one, prepare it all at once with gesso or just splash watercolor on it or whatever. Paint the whole thing front and back, then cut and bind it. Or you can cut it into the individual pieces, paint these front and back, then bind it, or leave it as white and then bind it. So that, again, that's completely up to you. The purpose of this video is the actual binding step, but I had to tell you about the painting stage before we get started. So, what you can do with this, which is really easy, one single sheet of 22 by 30 watercolor paper, and that will give you a book like this that opens flat with 12 paintable surfaces on it. And this is plenty to do a study, to even create art, to do whatever. It's plenty. Okay? I even have smaller versions of these, these books, and I mean these are great too, especially for something very quick and for experimenting. These are great. They're a really good size. Anything smaller, sometimes it can be a little bit more cumbersome to work with, but it's nice too. But you can make it any size you want. So this sheet of watercolor paper, so you can find it 140 pound at the art store. Try not to use 90 or it's going to be really chintzy. 140 pound, 300 pound is even better, but that can get pricey. So you're going to take your paper and you're going to cut it. You're going to measure it across. So if your watercolor paper was this big, actually let me just get this sheet here. I have a little template made up to save time. So this is your watercolor paper. You're going to measure it every 10 inches going across, okay? And you're going to cut it into 3 strips this way. Then you're going to take each piece and you're going to fold it in half. Okay, so we're going to pretend now this is our piece, okay? So you're cutting it this way, measuring 10 inches, and cut it. So you need an X-Acto knife and a metal ruler. You can use scissors if you want. That's up to you. Okay? Then, once you cut, you're going to have 3 pieces of paper. Your 3 pieces of paper, you're going to fold them in half. Okay? Now, when you fold your pages in half, what you're going to do is you're going to have to burnish the edges, and burnishing the edges simply means taking something hard, you fold it in half, line it up, and then you're going to burnish the edges, and what this does is it makes that fold nice and flat, which is perfect for bookbinding. Now, this is an actual bone folder. Okay, they will, depending on where you buy them and the style, they'll run you around $10. You don't have to have this. You can use the edge of a paintbrush as well. Nice rounded edge of a paintbrush. Make sure the paintbrush is nice and sturdy. Okay, you can use that as well. This actually is a little bit more comfortable because it's larger. When I do bookbinding using this, because it's so thin, my hand gets really sore after a while. But this will last me forever. This will eventually, the wood will actually file down. Okay, but, you know, use whatever you have. So you don't have to buy a bone folder, use the end of a paintbrush. So that's substitution number 1. Almost everybody has some type of X-Acto knife. If you don't, use scissors. Okay, so we folded that. So now we have our first piece. Then what you're going to do, you're going to take a scrap piece of paper, roughly about the same size. Okay, and you're going to also fold that in half. What we need to do now is make a punching template. Now, for our punching template, we need also, so we don't damage our table, a mat. Now, this is an X-Acto self-healing mat. You can use a magazine or a telephone book underneath. That's fine. We need to punch 3 holes. Well, instead of measuring, because I hate measuring, is you take the scrap paper, the exact size of your page. Okay, exact size of your folio. Fold it in half. Open it up. Then fold it in half this way. Open it up. Then fold it in half so the edge meets that middle fold. The edge meets the middle fold. And you're going to fold that nice and tight, so you're going to have all these folds. Okay? And then what you're going to do is taking a pencil where you've got those folds that intersect, you're going to mark with a pencil, like so. And where you've marked them with your pencil, that's where you're going to actually punch your hole. So you can do it 2 ways. You can put your template right on top of where your fold is. Okay, so what you want to do is your template has to be right inside that fold. Okay, so you're going to be right inside. And you can actually use what's called an awl. Now, an awl is a big fancy pointing thing that's used to punch holes for binding. These will run you, depending on where you buy them, this style could be between $10 to $20. You can get ones that are in a pen style, okay, which are a little less expensive, but they're a little bit flimsy. So if you're punching a lot of folios, okay, it might bend. You can use a very thin nail with a hammer. You can use, I've in an emergency, because I actually damaged my awl, I used my stylus and punched a hole. But sometimes when you do that, you'll actually damage your stylus. So the one nice thing is I buy the styluses in packages from Royal, so I've got multiple styluses. So the one that I've ruined, I use that for, you know, poking out holes and paint tubes that have covered over, so I don't ruin them. So you can punch your holes this way. You can punch your holes this way. What you can also do is pre-punch your hole outside, like this. Okay, just punch the hole in the template. Because if you're not comfortable doing it like this, then you can just take a pencil and stick your pencil inside. And what that will do is transfer a mark to your paper, and then you can punch it. Beginners have trouble doing it this way, because once you punch this hole and it's wrong, then your folio is ruined. But actually doing it like this, marking it, because your pencil will go right inside the hole, then you can actually see where it is and you can make a slight adjustment. Then you just poke your hole in that. So you're going to do that for all your pages. Okay? So put that aside. Put that aside. Okay. So what we end up with is these 3 pages. Now, what I've done is with these pages, I have just slapped on, literally slapped on gesso. I just put on some white acrylic gesso, and this just helps to not only stiffen up the pages, but it just helps paint adhere to it. Okay, you don't have to do that. If you don't have gesso, you can use a white acrylic paint. You can prep your pages with whatever you want. Okay, that's just me. I like working with pages that have been primed with gesso. That's just me, but you don't have to do that. I have, like this journal here, is primed with watercolors. Okay, this one's just watercolors. You don't have to use gesso. Okay, that's just watercolors. And this journal was primed with, I used the black and white acrylics and then shades of gray for the actual priming of the pages. And I just did different things, okay? But to make it easy, you don't have to use gesso, okay? So we have our page like this. So you're going to take your 3 sheets, you're going to nest them inside each other. Now you have one signature, and that's all we're going to do for this book. Now, once you really make that nice and tight, you will notice that the edges are uneven. That's because of the thickness of the paper. This you can leave, or you can trim down after you've bound it. Okay? You can put a ruler, and then you can cut it with an X-Acto knife. Okay? Some people like to do this, some people don't. That's up to you. Okay? There we go. Now, what you're going to do for the actual binding, you need needle and thread. Now, I started out with actual bookbinding needles, but they were so long and thin, I ended up hurting myself more often. And now, basically, I just prefer using a tapestry needle, which is curved. Okay? And linen waxed thread. Now, if you can't get waxed thread, you can just get heavy duty cotton thread and just run it over a candle. Okay, you actually can get bookbinding thread, bookbinding wax, which is beeswax, but just to keep it simple, heavy duty thread and a needle. And I like the tapestry needle because it's curved. And the thread has to be heavy duty. You can use embroidery floss as well, but because the embroidery floss, the one strand usually has about 5 strings, you may want to run that over a candle to try to keep everything together. Okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to measure the thread. Now for this, because I've got, it's just one running stitch. With this, I like to put about 2 sizes with a little bit left over. You're going to thread your needle, single strand, and you're just going to have your little tail running here. I tied a loose knot on the end, and now to bind it. You're going to open your book, okay, and you want to be at the center. Okay, you're going to be at the center, and what we're going to do is you're going to take your needle and thread. You're going to start from inside, right through the middle. Okay, see how it's coming through? Out there. Okay, I've got the tail there. Now what you want to do here is you don't want to pull it too tight at this point. You're going to go into either one of the holes, doesn't matter. So I'll just find the hole. Where's that hole? It's called having poor eyesight. Okay, come through here. Okay, you're going to go down all the way to the bottom. Go through that hole. Okay, nice and snug. Okay, nice and snug. Then you're going to go back into the middle hole. You see this hole that we have here? Okay. You're going to have one thread on one side. Scoot that under here. Okay. I'm going to unknot that. There we go. So now we're going to have threads on both sides. You're going to tie a knot. Two is sufficient. Okay. Now you can leave the tail hanging and you can, tie a charm on it or something. I prefer to actually cut them. If you're not using wax thread, you may want to use 3 knots. And then now we are all set. We now have our journal that opens flat, bound. How easy was that? And then from here, you can actually, whether you want to prep your pages ahead of time so you're not looking at a white page, or you can just go ahead and start creating your art. And what I like to do too is, I'll just use the watercolor one, is that when you have an idea, it's nice sometimes when you flip through and you'll find something that will give you some inspiration to create some art on. Okay, some of these are kind of wild, and I use these as background examples for single subjects. For example, if I'm painting a person's face or an animal where background doesn't count, but I use this as an example. Okay, so where I don't have to focus on the background, but I need something there, so I use this journal for that. So this one here, which is upside down, I was doing a study on colored pencil, and basically it didn't have to be, I didn't want it on white paper, so I just put it on, I just picked blue because blue and red go nice together, and I just did a study on that. Made some notes with colored pencil. Okay, so just gives you an idea. You can cut different, I cut some tabs off it and I kept the tabs in here. Alright, so there you go. So now you have something that you can work with. Again, if you're not sure of the benefit on using an artist journal, think of the amount of space that you will save. Alright, so I hope that you give this a try, and I'll have the list of supplies at the end of the video. And again, everything you need to make this journal, you should be able to find at almost any store, art store, places, any place that really sells watercolor paper. You can do this with, you can even do this with Bristol board, but remember Bristol board may not accept paint very well, but it's great for practicing, and you can even do it on a smaller format. Alright, so I hope you enjoy it, and in closing, stay inspired.